Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Gene Barr is here. We're going to get a little election update, plus his new book, A Civil War Captain and His Lady. That ought to be interesting. But before that, Bob Latham is here. We're going to talk about roads and bridges. You can't go anywhere without what? We'll tell you in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, Bob Latham is here. He's the Executive Vice President with the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. You can finish my sentence, can you? Without what?
Seeing barrels and cones and a slowdown for highway work zone.
Yeah. You know, what's really fascinating about it is we all get a little frustrated, you know, I'm sure you do, and you're heavily involved in, you know, making sure that it all runs well. And then I have to sit back in my car seat and say, now this is a good thing. We got to be patient and slow down. I've never seen this much construction and road bridge repair. Is it because we didn't do anything for years?
It's because we have more money now to put into the system. And the other thing about it is we are not building new roads with this money that was raised several years ago in the transportation bill. We're fixing the existing system. That's what PennDOT said that they would do, and that's what they're doing. We have a massive amount of bridges that need to be repaired. We have, we're a different geography than other states, and we have highways that need to be repaved and rebuilt, but we're not building new roads away from traffic. So people have to get around while we're working.
Yeah, not easy, and we all need more patience. I tell myself that. But now listen, there's another problem here. Over the course of the decades since these roads were built, some of them now just simply need a second lane, a third lane, and you wait and you wait and you wait. And it's no one's fault in particular, you know what I mean? It's just the fact that, you know, when many of them were built in the 40s and 50s, the migration patterns have changed. You get down, and I'll pick on one road, the Schuylkill Expressway. I just read where they're, going to try to make some changes that you go, oh my gosh, what's not right about, the plan right now?
Well, you look at the Schuylkill Expressway for the viewers in the southeast and the Philadelphia area. You have a hill to one side, a river to the other side, and a railroad in between both. There's nowhere to go. There's no land to go. There is one way to go, and that's up. And believe it or not, might be too much to talk about today, the engineering, technology, and capability is there to double-deck that road. That could absolutely be done.
I'm shaking my head. I'm not saying you're the expert.
We have concrete beams and the technology to do it. You know what we don't have? A massive amount of money that it would take to do it. But it is technically feasible. Now, I think, looking at some other roads and other bridges around the state, sometimes just climbing lanes, turning lanes, and particularly safety improvements that can be done. And that's what we're working on now, ways to move cars through existing corridors. We've talked about it before, Terry, some of the signalization projects and things to keep things moving along. But
you go along, you get one red light, and then you go another quarter of a mile, and you get another red light.
Right, but looking at coordinating that, there's actually the technology again, where the camera, if you will, can see the traffic coming and regulate the traffic light accordingly.
But I mean, in addition to that, obviously, if folks are watching on Channel 8 on WGAL, you try to get around the Capitol Beltway in Harrisburg about 3 o'clock to 6. I mean, you don't move. Over in York, similarly, if you're trying to get around York on 462. I still call it 30 no matter where it is. It's still 30 to me. And Lancaster's even getting on to 222. I mean, you can sit there and really wait, and that's a question, again, of the growth, I guess, here in south central Pennsylvania, right?
Right. Infrastructure, particularly highway infrastructure, is reactive rather than proactive to growth. So, and occasionally you have those issues. But again, like I said, we have to do all of our work under traffic today, and it creates problems, it creates some concerns, it creates some safety concerns, particularly if we can't get motorists to slow down in work zones.
I want to go to one other issue before we go to a quick break. money to do all of this. Now, as you know, you got the money from the wholesale, the gasoline tax. I won't go through that. Mm-hmm. Is there any request now for additional money?
Well, we talked about this. It's not necessarily additional money, but keeping the money in there that we had.
That's right.
Quite frankly, the pension crisis that is affecting the entire state budget has caused some strain on the highway fund, because as legislators seek to somehow find a way to fill that hole, they've taken more and more money out of the motor license fund and put it into the general fund. Now, last year with the budget, we finally put a cap on that, and then a plan to slowly walk that back. But that was going up at a rate that was untenable.
Oh, sure. Okay. Look, we're going to run to a break. I want to talk to you about the speed through these work zones. That can be, I've been out and you've been out and people go zooming through. I'm not saying I've not been guilty of it once or twice where you just go a little bit more than, but that's a problem. All right, Bob Latham is here. We'll be back and continue our conversation with him.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, now celebrating 100 years as the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
I'm chatting with Bob Latham. He's the Executive Vice President of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. I think those are the people who do what?
Build roads, fix roads. Fix roads and bridges.
Fix bridges, so they're all over the place right now. All right, as I indicated at the break, just speeding through work zones, has there been an uptick in accidents in work zones, do you know, since all of this construction is taking place?
Well, yes. It's probably because there's been an uptick in work.
Yeah.
More work zones, more accidents. But interesting enough, our research foundation did a study in 2015, and we went out to the public and said, now that we passed legislation, we're doing more work, we're fixing more roads, what do you think about it? And the number one reaction we got from the public on that was, we're afraid of your highway work zones. We're scared to go through them. We get confused through them, but more importantly, we're afraid of what the guy next to me is doing, because is he distracted, is he speeding, or is he whatever? We think that getting folks to slow down could alleviate some of that fear and that trepidation. Of course, make things safer and reduce crashes as well.
Now, there's something called an automated speed enforcement bill in the legislature. What's that mean?
In the vernacular, it's a camera the camera that takes a picture of your license plate, and if you're going more than 11 miles over the speed limit, that is, if you're on an interstate highway, not all work zones. This is a very limited bill. It's interstate highways only, and it's only when workers are present. That if you, let's say they reduce the speed from 65 or 70, which is what it's on in the turnpike now in other places, so it'll go down to 55. If you go 66 through that, it'll take a photo of your license plate and send you a fine. They have that in place in Maryland. If anybody's ever driven on the Baltimore Beltway, you drive through the construction zones there. It's amazing. Marylanders are the worst drivers I've ever. I lived there for 15 years. They're the worst.
I'm doing that today.
Take care.
Thank you. I'm glad to get
keep
this
your head
advice.
on swivel. But the thing is, Maryland. If you go down there, you get to a work zone, boy, the speed goes down because people don't want to get the fine, and that's the goal. The goal is not to raise fine revenue or to be gotcha. The idea is, hey, we're serious about this, and we're gonna ticket you if you go through, if you speed and you're unsafe to you and the other people around you.
I mean, it's as one driver who I'm on the roads a lot. I don't mind, the construction when they have those concrete barriers on both sides and you're, if I'm over 2 more feet, I'm going to careen off of one of those concrete barriers.
Unfortunately, particularly with bridges, there's only so much room to work, and you have to encroach a couple feet into the travel lanes in order to have enough room to work over here where you're trying to get the work done. The alternative is like what we did recently in the Harrisburg area. We shut a road down completely for several months, now, and that worked, but you can't do that everywhere.
Now, obviously, automated speed enforcement will do 2 things. We've talked about one, it'll prevent accidents, but it will also bring in revenue, right?
Yes, at first, because until folks realize that it's serious. What we saw in Maryland was that originally they were bringing in revenue, and the revenue declined every year as the bill was implemented. And that's the goal, really. The goal isn't to bring in money. The goal is to get people to slow down. The goal is to make a safe work environment for those people who work out on projects.
Absolutely.
I mean, their family, their mothers, their fathers, they deserve a safe work area. And I could recount several horrific incidents and tragic incidents because people were going too fast through work zones. But the majority of injuries, 85% of the injuries, are to the drivers themselves, not the workers there. So it's a safety issue for people driving around too. Gets back to the fear that I talked about in our study. So, all
right. Well, look, thanks for coming in. You'll come in again and give one of your periodic updates. All right, Gene Barr, you know him as the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. He's also an author. We're going to chat a little bit about his book, and then we'll do a little election update with Mr. Barr after this.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit betterwithcoal.com.
Well, Gene Barr joins me, and you know what we've done on this program, if we have Pennsylvanians who write books, we want to give them a chance to talk about the book. Here we did Brad Bumstead. He did the book on, capital corruption. He continues to write about that. That's his 2nd volume. Now, Gene Barr has a book. I think we'll put it up on the screen, but it's called A Civil War Captain and His First Lady. There it is. So, Gene, this is a fascinating book. It's about the letters of a captain in the 17th Illinois Regiment. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. And these letters were really not published anywhere, but yet they give you a great personal and inside view of this captain and the relationship with his lady, as you put it. But there's also insights about other aspects from both sides, from the war side and from the home side, right?
It is, and the book, in summary, really, for those people who've seen the movie Cold Mountain, read the book, it's kind of like a true Cold Mountain from the northern perspective, because it's a Civil War courtship, Victorian times, told through the eyes of Josiah Moore, 27-year-old Irish immigrant, 17th Illinois, as you note, and 19-year-old Jenny Lindsay, the daughter of one of Peoria's top families. He met her when he was in camp.
Not in Illinois. This is in Illinois regiment.
And it's all Illinois. And it's kind of a long title, because there's a subtitle. I tried to get the publisher to call it, because it's obviously Civil War romance.
I'll read this.
50 Shades of Blue and Gray, but they didn't want to do that.
You'll love this. Love, courtship, and combat. I love that, from Fort Donelson through the Vicksburg campaign.
Well, there was also a political aspect, because her father became the state senator from Peoria. He was a member of the Whig Party, turned Republican. He was a House member, became a member of the state Senate as a Democrat, peace Democrat, hated Abraham Lincoln. So you have this great tension. So it's an opportunity to look through the letters, as you point out, about what was going on in the war, what was going on in Illinois, how did she survive on the home front, what the difference was between middle class, upper class, working class women, his experiences, and there's a lot of unpublished material about the battles of Fort Donelson, Shiloh, and Vicksburg that he went through. And it was fascinating for me as a student of the war to find out some of this new information, particularly the Western side, which doesn't get told as often as the Eastern campaigns.
Yeah. Well, the Eastern campaign, you know, Gettysburg, Bull Run, and all of those.
Antietam, Fredericksburg, people tend here to focus more on those.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of natural.
It is. We're here. We're
sitting,
right there.
We're sitting, what, a half an hour from Gettysburg.
We're right there. That's right.
And it also takes place in our state, so there's another.
It does. That's exactly right.
That's a great way to put it.
That's exactly right.
All right. Describe for a bit the personal relationship in terms of the letters that were back and forth. I mean, this had to be very difficult. I mean, just maintaining a relationship under these.
It was.
You've got an Army soldier who's gone, and the women on the home front.
It was, and interestingly, it's not uncommon to find letters from soldiers back home. The rare part, and this is the rare part of the book, is to find those letters from someone on the home front to the soldier because they had no way of keeping them. There are 75 wartime letters, and it's extremely rare to find this. So it's really a Civil War courtship.
Hold on, I've got to stop you here. That's right. If you're sending them to a soldier,
how's he keep them?
How did he keep them?
I don't know. He was an officer. He was a captain.
Oh.
But interestingly, all of our letters for the year 1864 are not there. And I know she wrote, and I speculate in the book about why I don't think the letters are there. But he kept them through campaigns, through Tennessee, through Mississippi, found a way of doing it.
Oh, my golly.
And they survived because usually they didn't. These men couldn't keep them. They were out in the weather for about 40 days in Vicksburg in June into July. And trying to keep those is extremely difficult.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the other aspect of this that sort of strikes me as interesting is the personal nature of it. You know, we have all this politics stuff, and, you know, you've read, and I know a lot of our viewers have read a lot about Civil War and the politics of it, what was going on with emancipation, what was going, you know, with on the home front, particularly in the North, but also in, you know, with the Confederacy. And then you got this personal view that we don't get, particularly her role.
Yes.
That's sort of the forgotten piece of this.
Exactly. And for a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, as she writes these letters, her maturity level is incredible. The letters are extremely well written on both sides. She's well educated, obviously. He was a college student when he enlisted. But we're able to look at the letters and look how they feel about things. Their religion, they're both very religious people, how religion impacted their view of the war, and how the war impacted their religion, why he fought. All those things are in the book.
All right, there it is. A Civil War captain and his first lady, Jean Barr. It's Amazon?
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and through the publisher, Savas Beatty.
There you go. All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, we're going to do a quick overview. Presidential election in Pennsylvania. If we have time, the Senate election. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, advancing quality, improving lives. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
All right, Jean Barr, I think surprising to everybody is how close this election for the presidency has become in Pennsylvania. Now, not arguably, you follow these, you know. A Clinton state just for 6 straight elections, the Democrats have won. Now, we don't have the polls in yet for post-debate, but within the margin of error.
Certainly tightening up. You see the tightening across the national side. And, of course, for those of us looking at other races, the impact on those down-ballot races, particularly here in Pennsylvania, U.S. Senate. We've got some row offices and, of course, State Senate, State House, how that will go. You know, as you know, I suspect cascading down, the impact becomes less as you move down the ballot, but certainly has a tremendous potential impact on the U.S. Senate race.
Yeah. The big question is, you know, Trump and to some extent Senator Toomey has a problem. They're going to do well out in the Southwest with white working class voters. But an area you know well in this state, the Philadelphia suburbs,
yes.
Gene, that's really tough. Now, in midterm elections, the Republicans do well, but in presidential elections, particularly among college-educated voters, that's a really serious challenge for both Senator Toomey and for Donald Trump.
It is, and one of the few competitive congressional races is in the Philly suburbs, the 8th Pennsylvania.
Mostly Bucks.
Where you've got the old Fitzpatrick seat, which is all the Bucks, and part of Montgomery has the real potential to have an impact there. And as we mentioned, the U.S. Senate and Pat Toomey, I think, has really reached out and done some things that evidence his ability to try and moderate some things relative to guns, entitlement issues. And he's got to walk a fine line because in the West...
right here. He's on this fine line. Yeah. He's down the middle. He hasn't supported Trump, right? You notice I'm holding your book up.
Yes, and I appreciate that.
And then
Thank you.
I'll put it up like that. But you get it. I mean, I think that's his biggest problem. He can't anger the Trump supporters.
He can't anger the
On
base.
the other hand, he needs, as does Donald Trump, the white college-educated voters. I mean, you need all the votes.
And right now, Trump's not getting those. He's getting working-class people who justifiably are concerned about where they're headed in this economy, and he's tapped into that. And we're just going to have to wait and see as things go. But as you note, it has certainly tightened up. And I'm not sure, certainly nobody could have predicted Donald Trump would have been the Republican nominee. I don't think anybody predicted we'd be this close with that.
I couldn't agree more. Now, the one other, here's what I've noted. You know, we've always had, and you've followed a lot of these, we've always had issues about the past with a candidate. We always had personalities. Do you ever remember an election where the past and the personalities have so dominated at this point?
Probably not. And
what's with the issues?
You know, particularly with Donald Trump, you've got that history, through his business dealings, his comments, that, much more. And I think most of the time when you have two people who have a long history in elected office, they're careful about what they say. Let's be honest. You're an elected official.
One's careful.
You're being very careful in what you say. He hasn't done that for years. He's been a reality TV star for years. He's bombastic. He's gone out. He's said things that are now coming back on him. With hers, certainly the emails are going to continue to play a part of that.
And the Clinton Foundation.
And the foundation issues.
And she's even fallen into the trap of using some language like condemning half of his supporters.
Half of his deplorables. I mean, one point in one of the debates, she was asked, "Who are your enemies?" She said, "Republicans."
Yeah, that's pretty rare for almost any candidate.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're into the home stretch. My comment would be, and I'll ask you if you agree, anything can happen.
I think anything can happen. I've given up predicting this race. This is the strangest presidential in my lifetime.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, we'll have some polls out. We'll see if they tighten. We'll see where this whole election goes. Most of the congressional seats are safe, I think. We're out of time, but we'll have you back and you can chat about it.
Love to do it.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.